Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book Omen by Christy Golden. This is the second book in the Fate of the Jedi series. It's a 9-book series that was written from about 2009 to 2011-ish, somewhere in there. And the first book I reviewed on the channel, Outcast, it was a great book. Lots of fun to it. Some parts I didn't like, but overall a very entertaining book. And I feel almost exactly the same way about Omen, but I would put Omen slightly above because it has some extra things that work well for it. This is a very political series in that there are things happening that pit the Jedi Knights and the Jedi Order against the Galactic Republic and the leadership of the Galactic Republic, specifically Admiral and now really the leader of the Galactic Republic, Ntasi Dala. And everything about the political situation is fantastic. I loved that part cover to cover in the first book, and I loved it here even more. I think that these authors really got the political stuff down right. This feels very much like a Coruscant-focused book series, and the way the politics were handled were just very entertaining. This book also has the addition of a new group of characters, which are the Lost Tribe of the Sith, who had literally, as far as I understand, never been introduced to Star Wars before. And basically the idea is that back in the Old Republic days, this group of Sith crash landed on this planet, and then they just lived there, and their descendants lived there for thousands of years with literally no way to get off the planet, and so they just populated the planet. Now they have a ship crash down that is still, or not crash down, but rather land down, and now they have a way off the planet, and they have a way to expand an armada and eventually take over the galaxy. So you now have the threat of the Lost Tribe coming back. But they don't fully come back in this book. This is like a taste. This is like a little prologue to what the rest of the series is going to have in terms of the Lost Tribe. You get a little bit of the main character, Vistara Kai, who is a very fascinating character to follow, and I'm very excited to read more about her. But this is, make no doubt about it, this is the prologue of the Lost Tribe. You're not seeing everything with them yet, and I'm very excited to see where they go. So when you have the new world building, that's what makes this book stand out, is it has that extraness to it. There are some Star Wars books that try to do something new and try to have a new world, and it doesn't always work for me. I often prefer having something old as opposed to something new. But this is an example of having something new, like the Lost Tribe of the Sith, is just really fascinating to me. And I did read the short story collection a while ago, and I intend to reread it when I'm done with this series because I'm really fascinated by this idea of the Lost Tribe. And so this is Christy Golden's first Star Wars book that she wrote. I've read some of her later works that she did for the canon, including Dark Disciple and Inferno Squad. I thought Dark Disciple was one of the best Star Wars books in the canon. It's a top-tier, horrific Clone Wars story, and that Inferno Squad was a terrific Battlefront story. And, she does a great job of adapting to whatever series or whatever thing she needs to tie into. And as a tie-in author, she's most known for her Star Trek novels, which she wrote in the 90s and 2000s, specifically for Voyager. She wrote a few other Star Trek novels, one for Next Gen and one or two for the original series, but she's most known for her Voyager novels. And this was about the length of one of her Voyager novels, and it also, you can tell the influences of that writing style on her. I know that she'll write longer books later in the series, but this one, the pacing felt very much like a Star Trek book might be, but it was still incredibly entertaining. And I think that Christy Golden fits the group of authors. You had Aaron, who's writing the first book in each part of the series, and then you have Troy, who's writing the third book in each part of the series, and then you have Christy, who's writing the middle book. And when you had something like Legacy of the Force, that didn't particularly work well, because Karen Traviss had a very unique writing style, and she had something very specific she wanted to write with the Mandalorians. So every time she had a book, it's like the story would shift and just only focus on that. And it felt like she was neglecting the rest of the grander story. These two books feel like natural successors. If you had told me that these were written by the same author, I might have believed you because it felt like a natural book 1 going into book 2. Now, perhaps the way that The Lost Tribe was written was a little bit different than Aaron Alston might handle it later on, but the way that they both handled the main characters, Luke, Han, Leia, the way they handled Ben and Jaina, the way they handled Jag and Dala and all the other characters, they all felt very much in line. They all felt very natural to the story. And so I liked that progression. We have a tight story as opposed to a kind of loose narrative where there's a varying degree of quality. Now, I hope that there is something that they can fix, and I hope they do fix that in later books, and that's the Luke storyline in here. The Luke and Ben, they're off on their quest to figure out what happened with Jason and do all this type of stuff. And that storyline was the weakest part of both books. And in this book, they are going to the Ang-Ti people, and they're trying to figure out how Jason learned to flow walk and whether or not that affected his fall to the dark side. And while I enjoy Luke and Ben's banter, and I enjoyed the sequence where Ben flow walks in this book, with the exception of, while that part was good, the story itself there is what dragged the book down. This could have been a top-tier book, but that storyline just, as a story, it just was uninteresting to me. Jedi going out and researching a Force ability on a new planet is just not particularly appealing, unless I'm okay with Jedi learning how to do a new Force ability, but if you make the whole story about that research, it just becomes tedious and it becomes boring, especially when you have action sequences and you have political intrigue and you have, relationship intrigue. There's something with Jaina and Jag that I really loved that was really done well in this book. So when you have to compare that to the research, that seems more monotonous. I know there's some people who love exploring the Force, but I'm more of a minimalist when it comes to Force exploration. I prefer the characters and the action and the plot and the world building. And I guess you could say the Force is the learning about the Force is part of the world building, but the other parts of the world building, the Force, just examining it at its root, is just not as intriguing to me. So that part just doesn't work for me in the books. But despite that, I'm really loving this book. I'm really enjoying this series. It's getting me hyped up again for reading Star Wars books. I have the third book, Abyss, by Troy Denning, which I plan to read later this month as I'm recording this, and then I'm trying to do 2 books a month after this to finish this series by the end of the year. And if I keep enjoying it this much, you bet I'm going to make it, because boy, is this such a great series. And it's kind of going to be sad when I get to the end, because it'll be sad ending the story with these characters. But I really enjoyed Omen. If you enjoyed Omen, or if you didn't enjoy it, if you've read it or if you haven't read it, let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. Please subscribe to the channel. Please leave a like on this video, and until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.